And you are now listening to the fastest show on iSports Radio. My name is Darryl Kinsey Jr. Welcoming you, taking a lap of the extra mile for today, July the 7th, 2022. We had a lot go down in the racing world this weekend. I think just about every race we watched had some sort of major moment. Going to be tough to pack it into an hour, but we will, of course, try. And to help me do that, of course, my co-host for the evening, Christopher Lehman. Chris?
How are you doing this evening, Darryl?
I'm doing great. Nice to be back here with you. We had a lot go down. I think that's the best way to put it. Between NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula One, and the SRX, and H1 Unlimited. Just everybody had something going on this weekend.
Definitely makes for a good weekend, doesn't it?
Yes, and it's a lot more fun when the races are this exciting, and the chat is already filling in. Make sure to get your comments in. We will read them during the program. But before we continue, we do have to touch on an unfortunate, tragic event that happened in the world of motorsports and in motorsports exhibitions rather. During a air show in Battle Creek, Michigan, Chris Darnell, age 40, was driving the world-famous Shockwave jet truck in a exhibition run where he was racing two aircraft that had already taken off. If you've ever been to an air show, this is a common event that they've seen. I've actually seen one of this family's trucks at the Andrews Air Force Base air show back in 2019 before the pandemic. Well, the run was going normal, and what is being reported as a possible blown tire at 300 miles per hour caused a fire at the back of the jet-powered semi. The truck went uncontrollable, got into an accident, and unfortunately, from injury sustained in that accident, 40-year-old Chris Darnell passed away on Saturday. And Chris, I heard about this that afternoon and was just completely shocked. I think I may have sent it on Twitter. I did make a post on our TikTok that a lot of people did see. It is unfortunate that something like this has happened, but at 300 miles per hour, there's no such thing as a small accident. And of course, these vehicles have so many safety systems over the past 60, 70 years, but the things that we do and things that we enjoy and things we talk about on this program, we have to remember it is still dangerous. And I think this is the only one of the 32 shows where we come on and there is a chance that we're talking about someone that passed away in competition or during an exhibition run like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Even in my year and a half of being on the show, there's been probably 5 or 6 people that unfortunately we've had to mention on the show and talk about in a light that we wish we did not have to discuss. A lot of them, tend to be anything on two wheels is very common. Motorcycle racing is dangerous, and you wouldn't think that semis would be that dangerous, but when they're going 300 miles an hour, my only hope is that it was quick and painless, which I really hope that it was. And just to touch on what you were saying about 300 miles an hour, there's no such thing as a not dangerous crash. We see it all the time at 200 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. Every crash is dangerous at 100 miles an hour. Those crashes are dangerous. You'll still, even with all the safety equipment in the world, a 50 miles an hour crash can kill you. I mean, there's just so much working against you when you are in something propelled by a motor. That everything is working against you, and it's something that nobody takes lightly. Think about Sunday with Joe Granu, right? I was very, very nervous watching that, and if that halo wasn't there, we wouldn't be talking about one person. If there was no halo, we'd be talking about 3 people today. 3. Thank God for halos, because we're only talking about 1. And it's something that I was actually going to bring up a little bit later, Daryl, and we'll talk about it when we get into Formula One. But there's been a lot of talk about a driver salary cap, and Checo basically said, like, I'm not going to have any discussion about a salary cap anymore. After Sunday, that's out the window, and we'll talk about that when it's a little bit more appropriate. I think we should stick with Chris Darnell, and give him the proper respect that he deserves. I can't say that I ever had the pleasure of seeing his performance, but I did look up what he did on YouTube, and kind of to familiarize myself with what he did and what capacity he performed. And that's dangerous stuff, man. I've ridden in trucks doing 60 in big trucks, and it's a nervous feeling. And so I can honestly, I can't even imagine what doing 300 feels like with a freaking rocket attached to the back of the truck. I can't even contemplate what goes through your head, as you strap in, fire that thing up, and hit the gas.
I've seen it live. It is insane. And you feel the heat coming off the back of this thing, too, because it obviously uses the jet to propel itself forward from its stop point. It is some intense heat coming off the back of this thing, and you watch it just fly past you much faster than a Peterbilt should ever go. It is an incredible scene. I don't know if these trucks are Peterbilts or not, but that's the first truck that popped into my head. But to see a semi going that fast, it is something that sticks with you. And there's a reason something like that is very popular at drag strips and other programs where they want to put on some specialty events. It's just a shame that this accident has befallen the Darnell family that has been driving this for years and years and years. And as customary, before we go deeper into the show, we do want to give Chris Darnell a moment of silence before we continue. So if you could join us with that, please, we will conduct that and get into the program. Thank you. And now we will get into what we saw this weekend. And I think we can just go right there to that British Grand Prix. That was the best race of the season. That was the best race we have seen in several years in Formula One outside of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, which have always been pure chaos. Although this past one wasn't as chaotic, but almost ended in tears lap 1, turn 1, when Guan Yu Zhou got thrown between the barrier and the fence. I have never seen an F1 car do that in my life. That was terrifying. Thank God he's okay, and that's another win for the Halo. Absolutely another win for the Halo. And I know on this show we crushed it, but you know what? The dang flip-flop thong can stay as long as it wants, as long as it's going to keep saving drivers' lives.
It saved 2 this weekend.
Yeah.
2. Actually, Joe Granu put out a statement today. Today was the first time he talked to the media. It looks like he's on the road to recovery. He's doing great. He talked about the accident. Basically says that he remembers he was going in a straight line, so it was just so unexpected and instantaneous for him. He didn't even realize what was happening until he was already upside down sliding. Pulls his hands off, and he just said he was bracing for impact. And basically, what he said that when he stopped, he knew he was disoriented. He knew that he wasn't right side up, and he thought he was just leaning into the tire barriers. He did not realize that he had jumped that and was between the catch fence and the barrier. But I guess he was able to signal to the stewards pretty quickly that he was okay, and so and there was some communications where at least his team and the paddock knew that he was okay. He was conscious. He was good. So yeah, hats off to the Halo. It's saved multiple lives every race or every year. It saves lives, and it really just can't say enough about it. That's probably one of the best safety measures that Formula One has ever taken. Maybe the best single safety measure that they've ever taken.
Yeah, and we saw it last year work when Lewis Hamilton took a tire to the head. That was terrifying. We've got to do something for the top cover. I don't know what we're going to be able to do about that, but maybe, I don't know if you can really raise it up that much more than it already is without affecting aerodynamics, but that was terrifying, seeing that car get tipped upside down like that and then just get thrown into the fence. I've seen several fan footage videos of it, and it just shows how violent that accident was. There was no chance of saving that, and basically what happened, it's the start of the race. We've all seen the start of a Formula One race. It's chaotic. Latifi shot the gap between Gasly and Russell to pick up 2 positions. Russell tried to close the gap right as another car is coming in. No, it was Zhou and Russell that were side by side. I'm sorry. Latifi shot the gap. Gasly tried to come in behind him.
Latifi got a bad start in front of them.
Yeah.
And Gasly tried to send it up the middle. Russell was trying to snap in to close the gap, and I didn't actually watch the footage, but I say this every week. I listen to about 5 different Formula One based broadcasts, and they all had essentially the same breakdown. So I feel fairly confident that if the 4 or 5 that I listened to said it, it's probably true. But basically, you've got Joe and George Russell side by side, and Joe gets off to a bad start. Russell's is not great either. Gasly tries to send it up the middle, and as Russell's trying to close that off, and they actually think something got a little screwy with Russell because he kind of snaps his wheel over a little faster than what you would expect. So they think maybe he got a little loose or something. Had like some wheel spin or something along that lines. And when he went over, Gasly actually pulled out, realized that the gap wasn't there, but then got caught up into Joe Granu. Their wheels caught and just flipped him over.
I'm looking at it.
When I texted you and said, of course it was Latifi, I apologize, Latifi. It was not you. Probably will be next time, but this time it was not you.
Yeah, Latifi actually got a really good start and killed both of them off the line, and then Russell does try to go close that gap on Gasly. Gasly does pull out, clips Russell's left rear tire, sends him into Zhou, and then we see him go fly. Then Albon, unfortunately, gets clipped by one of the Aston Martins, goes into the I'm about to say turn 1 wall, but the pit straight wall actually set off the G-force sensors. But was okay. It was cleared. Zhou, thankfully, also okay. And will race this weekend. But once we got through that, the red flag actually came out, but it wasn't for that accident. They've been having some climate protests in Great Britain, and some of those protesters found their way onto the Hanger Straight. Now, let me say this.
They were dressed like stewards, by the way. That got them down there.
Yeah. So they were dressed like stewards in the orange jackets, sitting on the Hanger Straight. Let me say this first. I understand there was a climate emergency. I'm not going to sit on here and start talking about climate truthing and whether or not it's a hoax. That's not what we're going to talk about. I understand trying to protest it. Sitting on an active racetrack with cars going over 200 miles per hour is about the dumbest thing you could do for a protest. I'm sorry, there's a line between protesting and stupidity, and I'm going to explain why. These cars are moving through the Hangar Straight at about, that's one of the fastest parts of the circuit. Formula One cars can stop pretty quickly, and even they can't stop on the dime. So they come through Maggots and Beckett's, come on the Hangar Stretch, and see a bunch of people sitting across the racetrack. They're not going to be able to stop. Somebody's going to get hit and killed instantly. And who knows what's going to happen to that driver, because Tom Price in the 60s hit a marshal who was coming across the track to help a stricken car. That marshal literally exploded. Tom Price did not have a head. You could have inadvertently killed 2 or 3 people doing this protest.
Yourself. You would have died.
Oh, no doubt you would have died. The sport probably dies too, because I don't know how many drivers come back after that. But there's some common sense that some people, that's not the place to do it. If you're gonna do it, at least do it on the front stretch, like before the lights go out, so they can just stop the race there, instead of waiting for them to get halfway across the track. They're lucky they got seen, or this would have went from a climate protest to a tragedy real quick.
Absolutely, Daryl. And for anybody who has a morbid curiosity, you can search and watch the accident that Daryl mentioned with Tom Price. I would not recommend it. As someone who has seen that video,
do not go watch it. Do not go watch it.
Very disturbing, and I think the best way to describe that is that marshal did lose his life, probably instantaneously, if I had to guess. But I think what this brings up, Daryl, is a bigger conversation that needs to be had by just people in general, and that's track safety. If there's a live track, you have no business being on a live track, and it does not matter who you are. Drivers have no place outside of their vehicles on a live track. Marshals, stewards, officials, whatever you want to call them, have no place on a active live track, and fans certainly have no place on an active live track. There's just no part of being unprotected that is excusable. We could have been talking about not only the lives of multiple protesters, but you've got let's look at your top 4. You've got Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, and Charles. I think Charles was in 4th, but those 4 probably don't get the radio transmission early enough to slow down. The rest of the field, they probably do. They probably see the carnage and can slow down in time, but those top 3 or 4 probably end up striking the protesters on the track. And sure, those drivers are going to survive those crashes. They've got the halos now that protect their head, which was their most vulnerable part. There's a very good chance that if Grosjean can survive hitting a steel wall, a guardrail at full speed, and come away fine, with the exception of some burns. A human body is not doing anything. But they survive, but there is emotional trauma that haunts them. And even if they get back into a car, which there's no guarantee they do, they're not going to be the same. The top guys on the grid that we know and love, your Maxes, your Lewises, your Charles Leclerc, your Carlos Sainz, those guys that were right out there in the lead, they're not the same. They are not the competitors that they were before, and it's because there is trauma that they can't get over. They could be going around a corner, and even though it's not there and they know they're not, you see something in your head and you see someone on the track that's not even there, and you become a danger to yourself and others through that trauma. It happens. It would be PTSD, and we know what PTSD does to a person. in very extreme cases, there's hallucinations and altered states of reality for that person. And just imagine someone in a car, in a Formula One car, having a mental break. It would not be good. And just there is no scenario where that protest is okay, and I think it's actually very detrimental to what they did or what their mission was. Not to say that it was not valid or an important cause, but you went about it in the most incorrect way that I could ever imagine.
Yeah, I mean, protest is fine. Not gonna, we live in a country where we have protest laws here. We're allowed to do that. Don't put your life in danger needlessly like that. I think that's just the best way to put it. Just don't. It's not worth it. And you can't get your point you can't get your point across in the casket. That's how I say that. Arthur Parsons says, good evening, fellas. Hello, Arthur. We're going to wait for Chris here for a little bit. The top three was Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez, and Lewis Hamilton in the British Grand Prix. Nearly ended up being Sergio Perez versus Lewis Hamilton going at it for the win because, as Chris is joining us again, once again, Ferrari in this strategy thing, man, they are really, really bad at this. There's not enough negative adjectives to put it here. Charles Leclerc on that last caution, he had ample time to come down, get the softs, and get back on track, and they just don't call him in. Perez and Hamilton go down and get them. I mean, Sainz, Hamilton, and Perez get tires, and they end up jumping Charles during the restart, and those three went on a titanic battle for second. Leclerc, Hamilton, and Perez. Perez ended up getting the spot. But I look at it from the Ferrari point of view. Y'all have not done Leclerc any favors the last couple of years with your lack of strategy calls. I feel like they're either leaving him out too long or they bring him in far too early. He's supposed to be the championship foil to Max Verstappen, and his team can't get out his way.
Here's what I see with that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Ferrari, it is well known on the grid, and even people who dislike Red Bull, or I mean, Daryl, you're kind of in that camp. You're not exactly a Red Bull fan. You're open about it. But at the end of the day, you cannot say that there is any team on the grid that does strategy better than Red Bull. There just isn't. Nobody does it like they do. So Ferrari, when they're behind Red Bull, they can't get it right. All they have to do is cover, and they can't do it. And they're always reactive. They're never proactive. And when they are proactive, it always backfires on them, which leads me to think, like, just stop doing anything before Red Bull does it. Just cover them, right? They pit Max, you pit Leclerc. They pit Perez, you pit Sainz. Just don't do anything proactive anymore. Just cover it. You're going to be better off in the long run, and you won't win, but you might get second. That being said, Ferrari bungled the hell out of that that safety car.
Yes, they did.
There's just the only thing that I can think of is that they thought they only had 11 seconds to make this decision to pit Leclerc or keep him out. And my guess is that they were trying to run calculations that if Lewis, who was in third place at the time, if Lewis does not pit, does he get track position on Charles Leclerc? And then conversely, if we double stack, do both of those cars get out before him, or does Leclerc get out, Sainz get stuck behind him, and then where does Perez come into the picture? Now, Ferrari had a lot to contemplate in those 10, 11 seconds, which Um, but at the end of the day, you need to make a decision. They did, but it needs to be a snap decision, and it always has to be you pick your championship caliber car, your championship favorite car for new tires. Worst case scenario, he comes out second and has to battle Hamilton, who is on hard tires that are old. And Leclerc would have a fresh set of softs. And actually, Hamilton should have came in. I think Hamilton wins that race if they gave him mediums. His car did not like the softs. It liked the mediums. I think he wins. And
I wonder if they even had any more mediums, to be honest.
I don't know. I think they looked at the tire deck and thought we can get away with softs. But it's one of those situations where you just have to pit him and get him those new tires. And I'll tell you one thing. If that turn one accident never happens, Lewis Hamilton wins as well. Max probably wins because he doesn't pick up AlphaTauri damage.
Yeah, that cost him like 20% of his aero.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so we welcome Michael into the program here. But go on.
Ferrari, it's getting to the point where it's not even worth talking about what Ferrari did to lose the race this week. I said it after like the third round of the season. I said I think this is Ferrari's going to screw this up. It's Max's to lose, and it's right. Ferrari just needs to start playing it safe and react to what Red Bull does and score some points.
Yeah. As we welcome our resident Ferrari fan before we get ready to take a break here. It's a bittersweet day. Michael, Carlos wins, but your number one driver got screwed again.
I think I should leave. I come in and I just hear Chris just dropping Ferrari heat.
We can drop some Hamilton heat too if you want. I just saw a headline that actually popped up on my phone like 30 seconds ago that said Verstappen, and then in parentheses or quotation afterwards, I'm glad at age 37 Lewis figured out how to hit the apex.
Oh, goodness. He can hit the apex when people leave space on the inside.
But not leaving the space.
Anyway, so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, everything is not okay in the Andretti camp. In fact, everything is just about terrible. We'll talk about it on the other side of this break. And unfortunately, the Ohio River struck once again in H1 Unlimited. And we had our first blowover in quite some time. We'll talk about that on the other side of this break here on the Extra Mile on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. All right, so we'll do set point. Wait.
What's up, everybody? This is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you. Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organizations. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The Southern California Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere else in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may be getting that second chance you have been waiting for as an athlete. Follow them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Twitter, Instagram at Southern California _Warriors, and Facebook, Southern California Warriors. So we're back here on the Extra Mile on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Daryl, Chris, and Michael with you. We're going to get into H1 Unlimited and the rest of our conversation in just a minute, but first I do want to introduce a new segment that Chris came up with that we are going to try to do here, which is our own Drivers of the Week, where we pick who we think did the best out of all of the series that we cover. And I guess I'll go first, and I've got to throw this one based just on sentimentality. SRX Ryan Newman picks up the win on Saturday. The last time we talked about Ryan Newman in any sort of real context is we all thought he died at Daytona a few years ago, and what was one of the most terrifying incidents we have ever seen. But to see him back out on the track in a competitive car, it really controlled that race. Got to give it to Ryan Newman, and he's also leading the SRX points, by the way. So congratulations to Ryan. Chris, who's your driver of the week?
So my driver of the week this week is going to be Carlos Sainz. He gave Bernardo the bird, took the win this week. You have to throw a lot of respects at a Formula One driver who is the unofficial number 2 because his team does not have the spine to institute a driver hierarchy. He told Ferrari he was not playing the team game. He just did his own thing, and he got himself a dub. His first dub in Formula One, so big congratulations to him. And for that, I think that he is this week's driver of the week. What about you, Michael?
Can I just say, first of all, I'm surprised this man is giving a Ferrari driver a driver of the week.
Yeah, that's fair. I struggled with it. But at the end of the day, you got to game respects game, right?
Right. Well, mine is gonna be. At first, I was kind of going back and forth in my head. I want to say Charles Leclerc because personal bias aside, he did really, really freaking good for an F1 driver with a missing end plate.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to give it to Tyler Reddick. I mean, he won his first race on a road course at that. So I'm going to give it to Tyler Reddick. First win on a road course, a very challenging American road course. And I think it's well-deserved. I think he's been deserving of a win for a long time. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to Tyler Reddick. Man's been really good. I hope he gets more wins to come. Congratulations. Did he make it to the playoffs?
Yeah, he's in the playoffs now with that win. It took down NASCAR's road course master in that. Took down Chase Elliott to win that race.
That's another thing to beat Chase Elliott, mano a mano. I think that's deserving of it.
So we'll be doing that little segment each week. And before we continue, just want to get as we continue in now into H1 Unlimited. What's up?
We are putting a poll up. So next week we'll do this week we'll pick them Sunday, post them to our social media, and then you, the fans, can tell us who you think out of us correctly picked the driver of the week.
Yep. So we'll start that coming up this Sunday. Gonna be fun to see who picks up those awards, especially when we got Atlanta this week. Hoping to get some good news from a certain driver there. Anyway, the Ohio River. It is famous in unlimited hydroplane racing as one of the most treacherous rivers on the schedule, as the field rolled into Madison, Indiana for the Indiana Governor's Cup. And Sunday had one crazy final. Eric Holcomb was in attendance for the final, where Jimmy Shane in the U1 Miss Home Street took on the U9 Lynx Healthcare of Corey Peabody in what turned into a mano-a-mano duel for 4 laps, as that Miss Home Street had a lot of speed down the front stretch, but the U9 was able to stay with him for 4 laps. but on the first turn of the final lap, the U9 caught a bad gust, went into the air at over 185 miles per hour, landed in the Ohio River. The boat was destroyed. Corey Peabody was okay, thankfully. The boat was a different story. A sponson was ripped off, as well as heavy damage to the cowling and the rear wing of the vessel. We are unsure if that boat will make it out for Tri-Cities or Seattle. I have talked to some people. They think that boat's going to be ready for San Diego, but that's a tough blow for Corey Peabody, as effectively he is now out of the championship running with that damage. And that was not the only boat to get damaged, as also the U40, Dave Vilwalk, Misspeak Plumbing, hit a log during Friday testing and was unable to compete the weekend, destroyed a propeller which sent bits into the rear transom of the boat, or the transom, which was underside of the boat, completely destroyed that. That boat's going to need some heavy repairs as well. The Miss Home Street did end up picking up the win, but unfortunately, guys, the Ohio River, once again, has a bit in hydroplane racing.
That sounds very chaotic. I did not watch the hydroplanes, but apparently the theme for this past weekend was destruction, is probably the best way to put it. Sounds like just about every motorsport had some major destruction involved, and that's not necessarily always common anymore. But glad everybody's okay. I'm as someone who really enjoys water sports, I understand how unforgiving water can be at high speeds. So it's obviously very good that nobody got injured or anything like that.
Yep. So they will be back. They will continue the season at the end of the month in Tri-Cities for the Columbia Cup. Then they will move to Seattle for Seattle Sea Fair and end the season in September for the San Diego Bay Fair coming up in September. So we will move on quickly to IndyCar now. And in Mid-Ohio, the winner ends up being Scott McLaughlin, picks up career win number 2 in IndyCar. But that's not really what anyone's talking about. What everyone's talking about this week is the implosion of Andretti Autosport on Sunday. And this all really started on lap 60. Alexander Rossi and Roman Grosjean got into each other a couple of times. Ended up with Grosjean getting forced off the track by Alexander Rossi on lap 60. That caused a caution to restart Grosjean's car. On the restart, Grosjean ends up getting into Herta, while Rossi gets into Andretti affiliated car, Devlin DeFrancesco, forces him off the track. Both Rossi and Grosjean end up getting passed through penalties for that contact. They finish well down the order. No Andretti car finishes higher than 15th. And guys, I know that Rossi leaving the team doesn't have much to care about. I did read some articles this week. Michael Andretti is pissed. That team absolutely had a shocker on Sunday. And I don't think I've ever seen intra-team rivalry play out that badly on the racetrack.
Yeah, no, that was that was chaotic, hectic, confusing. There is no lack of adjectives to describe what exactly that was. And to be completely honest with you, we have, for quite some time, we've heard rumors about Andretti going to Formula One and trying to make their way. And this is a embarrassment to that organization, who's trying to go international with Formula One. This is not a great look, and I understand the the anger that would be involved by management, who Formula One is obviously a very snobby sport to be involved with, and this is not going to do them any favors in their bigger picture goals.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Michael? What do you think?
Sorry, what happened?
Basically, all the Andretti cars ran into each other.
Oh, they pulled an AlphaTauri.
Basically, on a much bigger scale.
Yeah, you can't do that. I'm sorry, guys. There's a lot going on right now. Yeah, you can't do that, especially to your teammate. It's one given rule: you don't hit your teammate in any type of competition. It's something that even as us as gamers, when we go out on the track, we're told do not hit your teammate. And for all 4 cars to end up in a crash, I think that's pretty bad.
It's
so. Oh, go ahead, Daryl.
I was going to say, yeah, that's pretty much how you don't do it.
I have another question for you guys, though.
Okay.
Did you guys, at the beginning of the year, if someone would have said that Scott McLaughlin has 2 wins and is 7th in the standings, would you have fact or capped that?
I wouldn't have said. I would have maybe said fact because I don't know much about Scott McLaughlin, but I know he's a V8 supercar champion, right?
Mm-hmm. He is like the GOAT at V8 supercars.
Yeah, I can actually believe he will win a race or two because if he's the GOAT at V8 supercars, and I believe he would get a win or two.
Though saying that, though, I mean there is a huge discrepancy in a V8 supercar versus an open-wheeled car such as an Indy. So my hesitation would come down to transferring over, which, how you look at someone like Jimmy, right? Because that would be the most recent comparable. Obviously V8 supercars are in a very roundabout way comparable to a NASCAR, just, overall shape, size, kind of aero. I mean, they're pretty similar. Jimmy is nowhere near where Scott McLaughlin is.
I think where it comes from is the amount of type of racing that he does. I don't want to say Jimmy's not a good road course driver or whatever, but NASCAR is primarily it's ovals, V8 supercars, it's road courses and everything like that. And I think when it comes to that, there's 2 different types of cars, but I think what the main thing that it comes down to is just talent. You can drive whatever you want, but if you have talent, then you can make anything work.
That's a bold strategy to say that Jimmy Johnson's not winning because of talent.
No, he's winning. He's a very talented driver. I'm just saying it's the type of racing he does.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's not winning over there just because of age, but that's a story for another day. Yeah, I would have facted. I thought he was going to be competitive this year, so I'm not surprised that McLaughlin is doing as well as he was. I'm actually surprised he won as quickly as he did, but no, I absolutely would have facted that he would be sitting here in this position.
I don't know. I probably would have capped it.
Mm-hmm. Really? Why?
I don't. Just with Indy cars. I mean, it's one of those things where it seems like it's very. I don't know I don't know how to describe it, but it's just there aren't a lot of surprises, right? Outside of kind of like Formula One, right? You don't really get a lot of surprises because the cars in Formula One is different. It's a lot more car dependent, but because of that, you get the same guys who are at the front all the time. IndyCar, it's not very car dependent. It's very driver dependent. And for that reason, it seems to be like the same like Scott Dixon, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can almost pencil him in for a win at any track anywhere, and you double those odds when you start talking top 5, right? Like you would almost expect Scott Dixon to grab a top 5 literally at any track he goes to. And when you start looking at that, just the talent at the top of IndyCar is there, and then you got your mid-tier and your lower tier, but I expected McLaughlin to come in as kind of like a lower mid-tier, just because of the difference in what his background is versus what IndyCar is. I would have predicted him to be a race winner. I don't know if I would have predicted it so soon, and I would not have put him down for 2 so soon. Now, maybe 3-4 years into his IndyCar career, I could see him being really competitive to where he is now. But I just kind of thought it's like a year, his first 2-3 years, I didn't put him being successful as he has been so far.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of think it's more like, A, he's talented, and B, well, you can't really put this up there, but, like, he's also on Penske equipment. But, you can't really give the excuse of Penske equipment when you have a field full of open wheel people who have been driving since they were kids, ex-Formula One drivers, a 7-time NASCAR champion, and you go up against that and get 2 wins. I just think, maybe he's actually just that talented,
Yeah, I mean, in Australia, he wheeled the hell out of those supercars. I mean, he won every race that he won. If you know what I mean, like, he's a hell of a wheelman. And honestly, you start looking at Bathurst, Mount Panorama. I mean, that is a track. That is I don't want to say like a man's man track, but to do that,
say it with your chest. Say it with your chest.
To do that in a real car, I don't even like doing it in Gran Turismo. It's like kind of creeps me out a little bit, especially after a couple laps and stuff. I mean, you start getting paranoid because there is so much to go wrong on a track like that, and then to do it in real life, like, Scott McLaughlin is a very talented driver. He definitely earned his spot in IndyCar. He definitely was going to have a successful career. I just didn't see his transition into a completely different car to be as quick as it was. Is kind of where I'm at.
Right.
Yeah, he has definitely picked up running this car a lot faster than anyone else thought. But we got slowly coming up against it, so I'm going to move quickly into NASCAR. I got one brief topic, and then we'll go into nearest the win. We know Tyler Reddick picked up the win, got the victory over the road course master Chase Elliott to lock himself into the championship and get his first win, or lock himself, into the playoffs and get the first win in the NASCAR Cup Series. But the day before the Xfinity Series, oh boy. So during a restart, Noah Gragson and Sage Karam made some contact. Noah Gragson didn't like it and absolutely cleans out Sage Karam, that also ends up cleaning out 13 or 14 other cars. Dale Jr. said the move was not acceptable. Where's Jr. been the last couple of years? Because this driver's been doing a lot of that over the last couple of years that I'm saying anything. Not sure why all of a sudden now it became a big issue, other than some owners called with their hands out looking for money from some of those underfunded teams from Junior Motorsports because their car got destroyed because their driver's a petulant child. As you can tell, I'm not the biggest Noah Gragson fan. Anyway, Noah was fined $30,000. I believe it was $35,000, 30 driver and owner points as well. I'm going to make this one quick before we go into nearest the win. Should Noah have gotten parked this week? I'm going to say yes, because that move was completely reckless and dangerous. And yes, we pay people back all the time in racing, not on the straightaway and not on the restart in front of a whole bunch of other cars. Could have got somebody hurt. I'm going to say he should have been parked this week.
I'm saying not only should he be parked, but he's probably got about 15 cars that will not forget what happened. He wrapped up so many people in that childish retaliation, and he does not deserve a cup ride. I love Dale Jr., but I struggle that he is still employing Noah Gragson. And this is not Noah Gregson's first, second, third, fourth, probably even fifth or sixth dust up of where we don't necessarily always talk about Xfinity or necessarily trucks, because this does go back to his time in the truck series where he made stupid decisions on the track, usually emotions. When you race with your emotions, you make mistakes. Or you do something stupid like he did. I'm glad that Dale Jr. finally spoke out. I wish he was a little more critical of Noah. And I personally, and I know that it's not in their best interest, but if that organization truly feels that they owe or not necessarily owe, but they are the hand in developing Noah into the racer that he has the potential to be. Because if you look at the racer Noah and you take out the emotional Noah, he is a good racer and he does have the talent and would have probably a successful Cup career. He is a good race car driver, but he needs to grow up. He needs to mature. And if Junior Motorsports wants to really take ownership of Noah and use him as one of their poster childs for their success, they need to self-impose parking him. And I know that it is very detrimental to what they're doing, but Noah the man needs repercussions, and it needs to be in-house where they say, Noah, you're going to sit out a race. You're going to come to the track and you're going to participate, but you're going to sit on the pit crew box and you're going to watch that race while somebody else is in your car. And if you do that shit again, it's going to be more races. That's what Junior Sports needs to do.
Michael, you get the last word, and then we go to nearest the win.
I'm a very, you have Adam boys, but it gets to a point where it's not good and it's also not safe, i.e. Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski. That was very unsafe back then. And I think he's a great race car driver, but when you're racing, sometimes you got to put your emotions in the last lap. So I don't think he's quite mastered that yet. And if he keeps on driving the way he's driving, then he's not going to get to Cup, more or less to win a championship, where in Cup, a lot of the talent there are going to be a lot less forgiving than in Xfinity.
Yep. There's a lot of drivers in Cup that aren't going to put up with that. But we got nearest the win here. Getting into this as we've got 6 minutes where Arthur Parson gets on here for the Bayou Bulletin. I continue to lead the points at 31 to Chris's 16 and Michael's 7. NASCAR, we're going to the Atlanta Motor Speedway for the Quaker State 400. Let me make sure it's 400 or 500, but while I do that,
I think it's 400.
Yeah. Okay, so it's 400. Last week I picked AJ Allmendinger, Michael picked Suarez, and Chris had Bell. I don't want to go with my traditional pick here, but I really think this is going to be a good race for him. They did just switch the pit crew, finally. And I think we're finally going to get the bad luck off. Bubba Wallace punches his ticket into the playoffs, picks up the win in Atlanta. Michael?
I'm going to go with... yeah, I'll go with Bubba Wallace too. I'm hopefully this doesn't jinx him, but you know what? Since you say that, let's go. You know what I mean?
All right. Well, taking this point is like taking candy from a baby. All I got to do is pick someone who I'm confident will finish above 31st. Because this team cannot I really hope for them that they score like a top 5 or a top 10. That would be a great victory for them. I need to see the organizational changes happen before I buy into that team. I'm not going with this because it's a safe pick, and I'm very confident that he will finish ahead of Bubba. I actually think that this driver has a very good chance at winning the race, and that's Kyle Larson.
All right, so those are our picks. And, of course, if you want to play Nearest the Win, hashtag Nearest the Win with who you think is going to win this weekend. So we are about to wrap it up. Remember, we now have a TikTok, The Extra Mile Pod. Make sure you check it out. And the iSports Radio TikTok as well. And follow our other social medias on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And also, remember to check out the... Go ahead.
We have the Red Bull Ring this weekend.
All right. Thank you for reminding me. Let me go through this spiel first. Let me get to the Red Bull Ring. I'm sorry, guys. Also, make sure to follow us on Facebook or on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for this show. And make sure you follow us. I'm at Diki Jr. 12. Chris is at Fiji Sims. And Michael's at Michael_Wart25. Now, that all being said, Red Bull Ring. Last time out, I picked Perez. Michael had Leclerc. Chris had Russell.
That was
Chris?
something.
Yeah, that did not end well. That went well for all of one turn.
I saw that and I was like, mother effer. The first time that I picked George Russell, it's literally, he doesn't even make it through the apex of the first turn.
Yeah, all right, we have 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes. We should pick.
Parking him for the race was BS, and that needs to be changed.
That was
be parked for being a human.
That was ridiculous. Go ahead.
That being said, only an idiot is not taking car number 1 this weekend. Max Verstappen, lock it in. It's done. It's over. He does not lose at the Red Bull Ring.
I'm also going to take Verstappen. Michael, who you got?
George Russell.
Well, I mean, Michael's got to get aggressive. He's got to get points, but we'll see how that works out. But anyway,
I can see Checo. I think Red Bull double podiums this weekend. I really do. Yep. And I think it's 1 and 2, not 1 and 3.
I could see it. They are really fast to this track. Anyway, we got to go. Bio Bulletin is up next. Make sure you stick around for that. For Chris and Michael, I'm Daryl. Thank you so much for listening. This has been The Extra Mile, and we will see you in the next green flag. Good night, everybody.